Psalm 5. Wow, this is a challenging one. Look at how it begins similarly to Psalms 3 and 4. Immediately, David expresses his requests to God because he is in a tough predicament. So, David is the king. He prays under such pressure. And then notice in the second stanza how, despite that pressure, he prays with confidence. He comes to the Lord in the morning. And in this confidence, he recognizes that God is not pleased with evil. He points out and even says to God, he acknowledges to him, you are a God who is not pleased. Uh, the way he puts it is actually in other terms by saying, you are not a God who is pleased with wickedness. And then look down a little bit further, you can see the next highlight in green, still pointing to this idea that God uh, hates evil. And it's on the basis that God does not, or rather, that God is going to answer him, even though he's under pressure, and that he's confident that God does not put up with and tolerate evil, that God is going to answer him. Because this becomes significant as we look at the next stanza, because as you read these next several verses, you might wonder, wow, how do I pray with such words? And so I'm going to take a more extended look at that. In the final or next to the last stanza, David says, lead me, Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before me. Not a word from their mouth can be trusted. Their heart is filled with malice. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they tell lies. And look at his prayer. Declare them guilty, O God. Let their intrigues be their downfall. Banish them for their many sins, for they have rebelled against you. And so we look at these or this prayer and we wonder, how can we pray these kinds of things? Didn't Jesus say, we should love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us? Well, yes, he did, but we need to remember that the Psalms are expressing emotions. They're expressing from David's perspective some of the pressures that he felt. And so he was simply being honest with God with direct words. And as such, he stands as representative of the Messiah Jesus, who stands in our place. And because the Messiah Jesus faced the same kinds of pressure, it is as if these words are his. And so, because in a sense they are his, we can be accepted before God by actually expressing the same kinds of words. But what's more significant is how the next to the last stanza here compares with what Paul says in Romans chapter 3. Because if we see the contrast, we will see that there's no way we can measure up even to the words of this last stanza. And that's really the point here. David is recognizing that there's no way that even he himself cannot escape the judgment that he prays against. And as we see in Romans 3:13, Paul actually, if you can tell here, he quotes the circled words that I have in the Psalm, again, referring to the Septuagint version of the Old Testament. And Paul's statement there in chapter 3, he's pointing out to the sinfulness of all people and how we need to depend upon God for our righteousness. I point out here, as you can see, this idea of righteousness and how it comes through in the same context. So this is a situation in which, by contrast, we can see as we reflect on these words that, wow, these are tough words to pray without feeling like we ourselves are under condemnation. And that's the point, because we sense that we need to come to God and trust in Jesus Christ, that he has stood in our place with such uh, struggles. And therefore, because we are in him, only in him, we can be declared righteous. Can you see the last portion highlighted in yellow here? That is, you notice those ideas and how they've been mentioned in previous Psalms?